All right, so welcome back, grade 10s. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 19, Challenges to Globalization. Lesson 19 is really the heart of related issue 4. Related issue 4 would be chapters 13, 14, 15, and to some extent chapter 16 of the textbook. And at the end of this lesson, we'd like you to be able to take note of the different tiers of needs according to Maslow. And we're going to take care of that right at the beginning here. And we want you to connect that to the ascending to a good life. Then connect the idea that an economy is meant to unlock the good life and explore to what extent has globalization allowed more individuals to move up the hierarchy. And that's the part of lesson 19 that we should be able to take care of today. So in your notes, you might have down the title, Challenges to Globalization. And then your first subnote might be Maslow, and we're going to talk about his hierarchy of needs. And why are we talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? We're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs so that we can associate Maslow's hierarchy with a good life. And then we're going to say that, okay, if an economy's job is to unlock a good life, then is this current economy doing that? So if we really want to evaluate globalism economically, then we have to have some criteria to evaluate it against. And the best way to evaluate something is to say, is it making life better? Is it providing a good life? So how can we define a good life? By looking at Maslow. So we're going to begin, we're going to look at Maslow so we can define a good life. We're defining good life so that we can evaluate the economy. We're evaluating the economy so we can evaluate globalization. So, maybe you've heard the name Maslow before. And when you think of Maslow, you probably think of a hierarchy of needs. Something similar to this. In fact, I think that visual might be on the final exam. So, I'm going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then we'll watch a 3-minute video on it. So the argument is that we have some basic needs that must be met first. And once we meet the basic needs, then we can move up to the next tier. But you can't work on this tier as long as you're still worried about these needs. If you haven't slept, I'm going to just ignore the sex part for now. Because you're like, dude, I can't feel safe or I can't respect others because I'm not getting enough sex. That's a whole, little rabbit hole thing that I'm just going to ignore as a part of his hierarchy for the purposes of Social 10. Oh, perfect. So let's just talk about the breathing, the food, the water, the sleep part of the physiological needs. So if you're not getting enough air, that's breathing, right? If you're not getting enough air, you're probably not going to feel a sense of belonging with others. Yesterday they had Gravity on TV with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, and there's a part when, after they've been hit by some debris in space, she is panicking. And as she's panicking, she's losing oxygen. While she's losing oxygen, she can't focus on anything else. She can't focus on love and belonging or esteem or self-actualization. She's not dying because of lack of oxygen thinking, I've had a good life. Man, I feel really complete right now. No, her body's freaking out physiologically because she doesn't have enough oxygen. So Maslow's saying that we have tiers, that we have to take care of this, then we can take care of that. That if we're hungry, if we're thirsty, we can't really feel complete. So if we have, in the global village today, if we have 2 or 3 billion people living in poverty without water, is globalization flawed? Is it working? If the purpose of an economy, including the global economy, is to provide a good life, and if a good life is self-actualization, because that's when you feel, and self-esteem, that's when you feel the respect from others, and that's when you feel maybe not pride, because that word can be negative, but some kind of a sense of accomplishment. If people can never get to these two stages because they're condemned by the lottery of birth, because there's no clean water around them, is there a flaw in the global village? If there's not enough food, if they can't sleep, if they try to go to bed at night but they can't sleep because they don't have a place to sleep. We have homelessness in our community. Now once we have food and water and air and a place to sleep, then we can move on to security. So if a good life is when you feel safe, the argument is we will never feel safe until we satisfy our food or water and our clean air. So in Cochabamba, in Bechtel, where the people couldn't even collect that water that we saw earlier today, that ends up taking away a good life from the people of that community. They will never be able to feel a sense of love and belonging if they have an unmatched thirst because water is unattainable. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Abraham Maslow is in psychology. He's a psychologist, and he says that this is the goal of life, is to feel self-actualized. This is when we feel comfortable in our skin. This is when we feel like our lives have been worth it, that we've had purpose. But Maslow is suggesting that we can't get there until we fulfill these tiers. That until we have our physiological needs met, we can't move on to here. So as a teacher, if I know that I have a student that's always hungry and doesn't sleep well at night because of the circumstances that they live, how can they end up developing, their A1 or A2 skills and critical analytical thinking? How can you explore that part of your mind if you're still occupied with these things? You can't. So studies show that students who are trapped here because of circumstances will not be able to learn at the same level as others. There's socioeconomic reasons why some people can perform higher than others. Physiological needs not being met can hurt people's chances academically. So Maslow would suggest that the purpose of the economy, and therefore the global economy, should be to make sure that everybody has this. Everybody has this. So then they can take care of these. So you could make the argument that if these things are essential, these two tiers are essential to get these things, maybe the government should assist people here. Government should ensure that everybody in Canada has clean water. Everybody in Canada has a house. And then, you know what, the government's not going to fund you love. Justin Trudeau's not going to hook me up. He's not my wingman. I don't need Trudeau's help. I'd be a little worried about what he'd do for me. But Justin Trudeau will make sure that, at least he should, make sure that the food and water that I need is being taken care of. Are all Canadians getting clean water?
No.
No. We have the boil water issue in Canada. So Canada is one of the wealthiest and most water-rich countries in the world, and yet we have a number of communities in Canada that have to boil water and have had to boil water for years because of a lack of infrastructure. And the majority of these communities are First Nations communities. And there's some hashtags involved in this, like hashtag boil no more. Let's see if that comes up with anything. Hashtag boil no more. As people are saying that the federal government owes a responsibility to Canada's Indigenous peoples, Canada's First Nations, that are living in areas where the water is not clean, that the government needs to ensure that this tier has been taken care of. That the government should ensure that we all have clean water, access to enough food, so then we can move on to this stage. And then in some governments, like in Sweden makes sure that everybody has a house. Nobody's homeless in Sweden. So the government in Sweden goes a little bit further than the government in Canada and says everyone gets a house. We don't like homelessness. But unless we're talking about some science fiction, the government does not get involved here. You know, there is in, say, Brave New World by Huxley, Huxley's Brave New World, the government does try to provide love and belonging, and that ends up creating a dystopia because it takes away choice for people. But the argument could be made that if an economy is meant to unlock a good life, then what is a good life? A good life is one where we feel complete. And how do we feel complete? Well, we need food and water. But we don't have that at a global scale. That at a global scale, so people without clean water in world, I have no idea. But I got eyebrows. I got enough eyebrows for everybody. An estimated 790 million people, 11% of the world's population, without access to an improved water supply. An estimated 1.8 billion people, a quarter of the Earth's people, without access to adequate sanitation. So quick little search shows that a quarter of the world doesn't have access to clean water. Clean water is one of those physiological needs. How can a quarter of the global village feel self-actualized if daily they're searching for clean water? That's an issue. All right, so we're going to look at a quick video about what is Maslow, and then we're going to jump to an issue of water so that we can continue that thing. And then we'll look at that source and maybe break it down and call it a day. So let's learn more about Maslow.
Grammarly helps make your writing clear and concise, no matter where you are. Compose a cover letter that's...
Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology. It argues that there are 5 stages of human needs that motivate our behavior. Abraham Maslow proposed his theory in 1943 after studying what he called exemplary people, such as Albert Einstein or Eleanor Roosevelt. First, there are physiological needs, such as the need to breathe, eat, drink, or sleep. The moment we get enough of that and we feel awake and our bellies are full, we get motivated by the next thing. Now we want safety. We try to earn money, build up resources, and look for shelter that protects us against dangers. Once we are satisfied and feel safe, we have time to think about what we want next. At stage 3, we seek love and belonging. We desire to be close to family and friends, belong to a society, or join a gang. But
So maybe the purpose of life is love and belonging, and quite a vicious looking gang he's drawing there. But the love and belonging, which may really give you fulfillment in life, is not possible if we're still searching for safety. And safety is not possible if we're still searching for water and air. So again, the argument could be made that in an economy, the government, the collective, the community, needs to intervene on behalf of those who cannot find those things for themselves. That seems to be a humane thing to do. And when we don't intervene, then what happens to that 25%? Is there a tipping point when the 25% go all French Revolution and say, we need to turn this regime upside down and take over power because it's not working for us? Maybe it's in our self-interest to help those living in poverty so that they don't become so desperate that they show up with pickaxes and guillotines and want to do a complete regime change. I don't want somebody with horns on his head dancing through my parliament. That's embarrassing.
the moment we feel completely part of a group, we already wish to be a little different than the rest. At stage 4, we look for esteem, self-confidence, and respect from our peers. We want to be someone. If we have money, we buy a fancy watch. If we have a brain, we write or think or work a lot. Motivation to perform and compete is now at its highest. Students, sportsmen, and inventors excel. Neil Armstrong even flew to the moon.
So some students might be saying, I never feel motivated. It's tough to get to that motivation stage if you're still dealing with issues in the other tiers. When Mark Wahlberg gets up at 2:30 in the morning so he can work out, When Dwayne The Rock Johnson gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning so he can work out. When Oprah gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning so she can pray. These are only possible because they've taken care of these other tiers of needs.
Why did you get up at 2:30?
So that he can work out in some quiet time, so that he can work out without, taking away time with his family.
What time did you went to bed?
7:30, yeah.
But that's taking away time from your family at night too.
Oh well, no, he has a younger family, I guess, so they go to bed pretty early too.
Yeah. That's really good.
Only if we breathe and drink and eat and sleep enough and we feel safe and part of a group and still special, only then can we reach level 5, self-actualization. Now we can relax, be creative, accept facts for what they are, give back or do whatever we want. No more pressure, unless of course there is trouble below. If you are a leader and believe in the theory, use it. First, make sure everyone has eaten well. Then make them feel safe and help them belong to a group. Once they feel they belong, they are ready to stand out and excel. Thanks for watching.
Alright, so again, the purpose of an economy is to unlock a good life. Then how do we define a good life? Self-actualization. What's the path to self-actualization? Maslow has some very easy to follow tiers. But the problem is that globally we have a quarter of the earth that they don't even have access to clean water. And that would be a flaw of globalization. So we're going to continue our look at water then, as we unpack to what extent is globalization giving us the things needed to have a good life. And unfortunately, question first, yes?
Well, I mean, we can.
Sorry?
Okay.
Okay, well, my finishing is a 5-minute video, so if you have a question, now's a good time.
I was gonna ask, do we know any other statistics before, like, modern age?
About, like, how many people had clean water?
Yeah.
No, we don't. Like, are things getting worse in terms of water? We don't know about in terms of water, but if you look at poverty in general, sir, we can look at this graph and you can see life is getting better. In China, life has gotten a lot better since 1981. In India, it's gotten a little bit better. In sub-Saharan Africa, things didn't really get a lot better at all. So what has China done since 1981 to see such a rapid decrease of poverty? China, even since 2010, China is now saying poverty is eliminated in China, that there's no poverty in China anymore. So what did they do to get rid of poverty? They embraced the global village. Globalism was their path to eliminating poverty. They found a niche in the global village. They are the manufacturing hub of the world. And by embracing that niche, they pulled the largest population in the world out of poverty. So globalization, in terms of the Chinese story, has been a godsend. That under Mao Zedong, Chinese people were living in poverty. But when Mao died and Deng Xiaoping said to get rich is glorious in 1976, there was a shift towards individualism. This is the opposite of your essay. There's a shift towards individualism, and under economic individualism in China, you can see by that graph, life got better. Life got better. There are billionaire Chinese people now, right? And under Mao, there simply weren't, because under communism, there wasn't room for that kind of creation of personal and private wealth. So the transformation of China does show that globalization can be beneficial. And it's working in India, it's a little slower. It's working in the developing world. Where it's not really working yet is sub-Saharan Africa. They seem to be the last area of the world being able to globalize. So we don't have numbers with regards to water per se, but this is kind of a number that takes into account water and food and shelter and all of those criteria. But we're about to watch a video that's going to suggest that water is the issue of water may not be going away. There we go. No, thought I'd already opened it.
This is checkers
Man,
game
TED
with
Talks.
son and granddad.
It's just not the same watching a TED Talk at home.
Oh no.
From space, our planet appears to be more ocean than Earth. But despite the water covering 71% of the planet's surface, more than half the world's population endures extreme water scarcity for at least 1 month a year. And current estimates predict that by 2040, up to 20 more countries could be experiencing water shortages. Taken together, these bleak statistics raise a startling question. Are we running out of clean water? Well, yes and no. At a planetary scale, Earth can't run out of fresh water thanks to the water cycle, a system that continuously produces and recycles water, morphing it from vapor to liquid to ice as it circulates around the globe. So this isn't really a question of how much water there is, but of how much of it is accessible to us. 97% of Earth's liquid is salt water, too loaded with minerals for humans to drink or use in agriculture. Of the remaining 3% of potentially usable fresh water, more than 2/3 is frozen in ice caps and glaciers. That leaves less than 1% available for sustaining all life on Earth, spread across our planet in rivers, lakes, underground aquifers, ground ice, and permafrost. It's these sources of water that are being rapidly depleted by humans, but slowly replenished by rain and snowfall. And this limited supply isn't distributed evenly around the globe. Diverse climates and geography provide some regions with more rainfall and natural water sources.
So what country in the world has the most fresh water? We do, right? We're number one. So Canada has clean water, but there are many countries that do not. Now, when they say that 97% of the world's water is salt and therefore undrinkable, I think somewhere in the world there should be a hand going up, and it's an Israeli Jewish hand, and saying, wait a minute, we desalinize water from the Mediterranean, and that's what we use to grow our crops. And that's how we turned a desert into a paradise. So Israel shows that you can desalinize water.
Why don't you do that?
Sorry, what?
Why don't other countries do that?
I don't know. The Israeli Jewish people, they just seem to have a vision to work together as a nation.
Like, are they not sharing their recipes?
Oh no, other people know how to do it. It's just the Israeli Jews are really driven to stay together as a nation.
Huh.
2,000 years of being persecuted seems to really want them to build something that will last.
Not fair enough.
While other areas have geographic features that make transporting water much more difficult. And supplying the infrastructure and energy it would take to move water across these regions is extremely expensive. In many of these water-poor areas, as well as some with greater access to water, humanity is guzzling up the local water supply faster than it can be replenished. And when more quickly renewed sources can't meet the demand, we start pumping it out of our finite underground reserves. Of Earth's 37 major underground reservoirs, 21 are on track to be irreversibly emptied. So while it's true that our planet isn't actually losing water, we are depleting the water sources we rely on at an unsustainable pace. This might seem surprising. After all, on average, people only drink about 2 liters of water a day.
So
But
thirsty.
water plays a hidden role in our daily lives. And in that same 24 hours, most people will actually consume an estimated 3,000 liters of water. In fact, household water, which we use to drink, cook, and clean, accounts for only 3.6% of humanity's water consumption. Another 4.4% goes to the wide range of factories which make the products we buy each day. But the remaining 92% of our water consumption is all spent on a single industry, agriculture. Our farms drain the equivalent of 3.3 billion Olympic-sized swimming pools every year.
Now, I'm the last person to point my finger and be angry at a farm because, you know what, I need to eat. And without a farmer, I wouldn't eat. But what they're suggesting is that if we want to use less water, we need to perhaps refocus our diet. What is it that we're eating? What is it that we're demanding from our farmer to make? that there are probably more water-friendly products that our farmers could be farming. So instead of farming something, they farm something else. So anybody know of an example? I could eat less something and maybe trade it with something else. So eat less meat, yeah. So yesterday I had a bean and veggie burger instead of a beef burger, and it was a solid 4 out of 10, right?
Wouldn't you be using your warm water bottle water by all those veggies?
Or to wash that crap down, I had to drink like 3 glasses of water.
No, I mean like growing veggies.
Yeah, and then you gotta water and stuff. Yeah.
Compared to growing a beef.
I honestly don't know the solution. That's why I kind of put it out to you guys. Like, what crop would require less water? So, yeah, maybe look into that. Save the world.
All of it swallowed up by crops and livestock to feed Earth's growing population. Agriculture currently covers 37% of Earth's land area, posing the biggest threat to our regional water supplies, and yet it's also a necessity. So how do we limit agriculture's thirst while still feeding those who rely on it? Farmers are already finding ingenious ways to reduce their impact, like using special irrigation techniques to grow more crop per drop and breeding new crops that are less thirsty.
More crop per
Other
drop.
industries are following suit, adopting production processes that reuse and recycle water. On a personal level, reducing food waste is the first step to reducing water use, since 1/3 of the food that leaves farms is currently wasted or thrown away.
I'll just eat
You
it
might
all.
also want to consider eating less water-intensive foods like shelled nuts and red meat. Adopting a vegetarian lifestyle could reduce up to 1/3 of your water footprint. Our planet may never run out of water, but it doesn't have.
Or you could keep eating beef and just don't shower, right? It's like, you know what? Am I going to give up the shower or the steak? I'm keeping the steak. I might be a little stinky.
Do for individuals to go thirsty. Solving this local problem requires a global solution, and small day-to-day decisions can affect reservoirs around the world. So where will these
So if we need a global solution, and it's not time to pack up yet, guys. If we need a global solution, that's why we need collectivism. That if Russ McBride on his own decides, you know what, I've had a paradigm shift, I'm going to eat more sensibly so that I can reduce my water demand, my ecological footprint of water, that's really not going to make a difference. We need a global tidal wave to make a lasting difference.
Why did you have that bread yesterday? The same water?
Yeah, I just had some in the freezer. I didn't have any beef in the freezer. I don't mind the taste, but it's not quite the same.
You might have heard that we're running out of fresh water. This
Heard
might
it.
sound strange to you because if you live in a place where water flows freely from the tap or shower at any time, it sure doesn't seem like a big deal. It's just there, right? Wrong. The only obvious thing about fresh water is how much we need it. Because it's essential to life, we need to think about it carefully. Right now, at this very moment, some people, women and girls in particular, walk hours and miles per day to get fresh water. And even then, it may not be clean. Every 15 seconds, a child dies due to waterborne diseases. This is tragic. The most compelling reasons to think about fresh water therefore have to do with what we might call the global common good. This is not something we normally think about, but it means recognizing how much fresh water matters for the flourishing of human and non-human life on Earth, now and in the future.
This is your essay.
How do we think about something as local as our faucets and as global as fresh water? Is there a connection between them? Many people assume that fresh water shortages are due to individual wastefulness, running the water while you brush your teeth, for example, or taking really long showers. Most of us assume, therefore, that water shortages can be fixed by improving our personal habits, taking shorter showers, or turning off the water while we brush our teeth. But global fresh water scarcity neither starts nor ends in your shower. Globally, domestic use of fresh water accounts for only 8% of consumption. 8%! Compare that to the 70% that goes to agriculture and the 22% that goes to industrial uses. Now, hold up. You're not off the hook. Individual
Oh, so
habits
the numbers
still
are
part of the
different, right?
puzzle.
Oh, wait.
You should still cultivate water virtue in your daily life. Turn off the tap when you brush your teeth. But still, it's true. Taking shorter showers won't solve global problems, which is too bad. It would be much more straightforward and easier if virtuous individual actions could do the trick. You'd just stand there for 30 seconds less and you'd be done with that irksome planet-saving task for the day. Well, that's not so much the case. Agricultural and industrial patterns of water use need serious attention. How do our societies value water, distribute it, subsidize its use in agriculture, incentivize its consumption or pollution? These are all questions that stem from how we think about fresh water's value. Is it an economic commodity, a human right, a public good? Nobel Prize winners, global water justice activists, transnational institutions like the United Nations, and even the Catholic Church are at work on the issue. But it's tricky too, because the business of water became very profitable in the 20th century. And profit is not the same thing as the common good. We need to figure out how to value fresh water as a public good, something that's vital for human and non-human life now and in the future. Now that's a virtuous collective task that goes far beyond your shower.
So once again, I think that this case study has a logical fit back to our essay prompt about the common good. One last thing that we're going to do before we wrap up the day is take a peek at a source, and I'll blow it up, and you can practice some of your long lost A1 skills here. So I'm going to stop the video there, but we actually have class till 3:10 if you guys can't remember, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to just try to look for an ideological perspective here.